Okay, guys, we are gonna get started. This is my first time teaching for this semester. In case you guys don't remember me, my name's Brianna. I'm one of the instructors. So yeah, we're gonna get started. Today we're going to be talking, sorry, this should say lists and dictionaries. So we're covering two types of variables in Python and different things you can do with them. Okay, so yeah, some quick announcements. Homework 3 is due on Thursday at midnight. These are office hours. If you have any questions, any Python questions, any non-Python questions, you can come. We're all very friendly. And yeah, okay. So we're gonna get started. I'm actually, for lecture, going to start with a demo. So if everyone can get VS Code open to just a new document, we're gonna get started. Okay. Raise your hand if you do not have VS Code open. Okay, one person. Do you need help getting it open? Okay, so we're gonna get started. Okay, so today, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about lists and dictionaries. So I'm just gonna comment throughout this. So in case you guys because I do this especially during lecture, I'll blank out for a second and then I'll be like, oh wait, what are we doing? So I'll just write some extra comments in here. But we're gonna do introduction. Introduction to lists. Okay. And then we're going to start with just some examples of lists. So how you tell Python that your variable is a list is with square brackets. So those are going to be extra key for this list portion. So okay, so I'm going to call a variable. We're going to call it just nums for numbers. And I'm just going to throw a bunch of things in there. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay, so this is a list right here. So we have our variable name nums =, square brackets, and then a list of numbers separated by a comma. So Python now interprets this as a list variable opposed to like an integer or a float. Okay, so that's just a normal standard list. You can also put other things. They don't just have to be integers. So I can call another list called planets. I'll turn this way slightly. And I'm just going to fill it with some planet names. Okay, And then Python will also recognize this as a list. I'm just going to do a couple other ones. So you can also, Python, you do not have to have the same variable type inside of your list. So I'm going to call this one mixed. And we can put like an integer, and then I can put a string in there. And then I can give it a Boolean, and then I can also give it a float. And this is still a list. Okay, 2 more, and then we'll start working with them. I'm going to call this one nested. So in Python, when you put a list inside of another list, we call that a nested list. So I'm going to put my square brackets, and then I'm going to call a list inside. So I'm going to add another set of square brackets inside of my previous square brackets. And I'm going to go 1, 2. So that's my first element, just like it's like a 1 for numbers or Mercury. That's an entire section of data, which is technically also a list. And then I can call another one inside. So that is a nested list. And then I have one more, which is just an empty list. Which is like, yes, also technically a list. It just has nothing in it. Okay, do we have any questions so far? Yeah. Yep, that's what we're going to be doing all of today. Okay, so now we have those stored in Python. So I'm going to print a list. So I'm going to call print, and then we'll just print nums. Sorry, did I call it something? Why is it not? Okay, that's odd. Okay, awkward. We can do the same thing. You guys, are you guys able to run this in VS Code? Or am I doing something silly? I have to save it. Okay, you guys can follow along in VS Code. I hate to say it, I never use VS Code, so I'm just gonna open up a notebook, but you guys can still run it in your terminal. Okay. So I'm just gonna drag this over here. Okay, and then I can print a list, and it will, let me zoom in, it's pretty small. And it will give me that list, which if you call in VS Code, will print out in your terminal. Okay. Are you guys good to follow along in VS Code? Cool, sorry. Okay, now I can print another list, so I can call, for example, I can call print planets, and that will do the same thing. Okay, I realized I need to copy this over. Okay. Okay, so that is just standard printing of the lists. Now we're gonna do something, we're gonna start actually using them. So right inside of the box, let me make another one. Okay, so Now what we can do is lists are specific to Python because they're ordered. So that means when I give Python my list from 1 to 10, it remembers the location and the value. So as I believe mentioned in previous lectures, what number does Python start counting at? 0, yeah. So when I call print on nums, and then I go 0, what value is it going to show? 1. Sorry. Yep. Typo. Okay, there we go. Yep, 1. So then if I call print nums 1, that will print 2, and so on and so forth. And then if I call print, let's say planets, and then I call 2, then that's going to print the third item in my list, since Python, as you guys know, starts counting at 0. Okay. So now we are going to start adding elements to our list. So this can be done. So I'm just going to add a comment. Okay, and then what we can do is we can call nums, and then we can go dot append, and then I can go 11, and then I can print nums, and it will add an 11 to the end. So appending is taking the entire list, making a new slot, and throwing whatever you put inside of the parentheses into that new location. So then if I print the index here, so if I go print, and then I go nums, and then I go 10, that should print my new value since I just added that. Okay. There is another way you can add elements to a list in Python. So another way is add a specific index with the insert function. So with that, I can call, let's say, planets, and then I can go dot insert, and I can go, if I want to insert, if I look at my list right here, this is 0, indexed at 0, indexed at 1, indexed at 2. I'm missing Venus. I did that on purpose. And therefore, I want Venus to be where Earth is, and I want everything else to shift over by a spot. So what I can do is I can now say I want my new spot to be called Venus at index 1. Then I can print planets. And now I have Venus inserted into the 1 index location. Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, I'm going to keep going. All right, so now we know how to make lists. We know that we can make lists with different combinations of variables or data types inside of them. Now what we can do is we can modify at specific locations. So to do that, so if I print nums again, and then I have my list here, if I want to modify it, then what I can do is I can do nums, and then I can tell Python, okay, at the 1 index location, so where I have 2, I want to replace this number. So I can call it a completely new number. Let's just go with 222. And then I can print nums again. Okay, so I had my original list. Then I said, Python, at the number 2, or my first index, can you replace it with 222, and then print again, and that's what we have in the output statement. So that is how you can modify at a specific location. Okay, so we don't want to just add things to lists. It would also be nice to remove things. So what I can do is I can delete with the remove function, and I can also delete with the pop function. Each of these have different purposes. So for remove, what I can do is if I, let's say, print planets again, and I want to get rid of a planet because I don't know, just want to, I can do planets dot remove, and then that will get rid of a specific value. So Python is going to look for Mercury, and then it's going to remove Mercury from my list. Okay, so the remove function is for if you know the value in your list. If, let's say, you have a giant data set and you have no idea what's at value 8, then this would not be as helpful. But if you're working with really small lists and you know the exact value there and you just want to delete it out, you can call dot remove. But if I want to do it at a specific index, then what I can do is I'm going to print planets again. And then if I want to say, okay, I want to remove Earth, but I want to do it by its index, then I can do planets.pop, and then I can call 1, and then I can do print planets. And it deleted Earth from the first indexed location. All right, do we have any questions? Yeah.
If there are multiple items in the list with the same value, do you use remove all of them?
I don't know, you can Google it. You can let me know. Do you want me to scroll up to a different section? Yeah, what's your question? Do you want me to clarify what it's doing? Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So now we are going to start talking about dictionaries. So dictionaries are another variable. I like to think of them as lists, but a lot more detailed in their structure. So just going to title this section. And then I'm going to write out an example dictionary. Okay, so dictionaries are quite an ordeal to type out, so I'm going to go slow, but they become very helpful. So I'm feeling like planets today, so I'm going to make a dictionary all about Mars. So a dictionary basically holds characteristics, and then we assign values to those characteristics. So for example, Mars, it's red. Its color is red. Its name is Mars. It has a certain width. It has a certain amount of moons. You can all assign those in a dictionary and then just call Mars, and all of that information is available to you. Okay, so I'm going to do it slowly, but I'm going to call this one fourth planet. No, wait. Yeah, it's the fourth planet. Okay. I'm an astronomy major. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is for dictionaries, unlike lists, you use curly brackets. So lists are square, dictionaries are curly. And for dictionaries, you set up a key and value for each part of it. So just like a list, you had 1, 2, 3. In dictionaries, you have key value, key value, key value. So that's what we're going to write out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call name. So this is my key. And then I have to use a colon to separate out the key and the value. And I'm going to give it its name, Mars. Okay, now that's one piece of data. It has a key and it has a value. You can see how this can be repeated with other planets using the same key. So if I choose the same name, if I choose to use the key name, I could also have a different dictionary talking about Earth. So that's what dictionaries are helpful for. So then I can give it its moons. So Mars has 2 moons, and I can give it to it as a list of strings. So I can call Phobos, and its other moon is Deimos. So I can assign, as values, I can assign them whatever type of data type I would like. Okay. And then I'm going to call diameter of Mars in kilometers, which I have right here, is 6,337. And then I can assign another value. Sorry, that was a typo. This should be a colon. And then I can assign another value, atmosphere, and I can also give it a Boolean. Or that's not true. Okay, and then I'm going to close it off with another curly bracket. So that is my dictionary. So I'm talking about the 4th planet. Its name is Mars. It has this many moons. This is how big it is. And I'm asking, does it have an atmosphere or not? Okay. Now, to work with dictionaries, we can just print them out. So I can just call print 4th planet. And I spelled it wrong, of course. 4th. Okay. And it gives me out all of the information inside of the dictionary. All right. Now, if I want to print only a certain part of the dictionary, so let's say I want to print 4th planet, and then I only want its name, I can assign that in square brackets next to it, and then I can call that out. So my dictionary is called 4th planet. It has this key and value pair, with the key being names, the value being Mars. So when I call the key name, then it'll tell me, okay, this is what I'm attached to, which in this case, we called it Mars. All right. Now, I can also do it in the reverse way. So let's say I want to instead give it the key, and I want it to give me, no, sorry. I can also do this a different way and still get out the values. So I can go print, I can go 4th planet, I can do get, and then I can call the key moons. And it will get me the value just as it did with when I attached this other key to it. So they're just 2 different ways to do pretty much the exact same thing. It's just up to you how you want to use it. Okay. Now, if I want to modify a dictionary, then what I can do is I can call the key that I want to modify. So I'm going to call my dictionary, 4th planet. Then I'm going to call the key. And let's say we terraformed it. So its atmosphere, I can now set to true. Then, once I call the dictionary again, it will replace the value that I assigned to the key with the one that I gave it in the line above. So that is how you can modify a part of your dictionary. Do you want me to scroll back up, or are we following along? Okay, I see 2 thumbs up. Can I get some more thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay. Now, if I want to add a section to my dictionary, I can call it. Then I can give it a new key, which I'm just going to call color. And then I can assign that to be red. So then, when let me add a comment. Then when I call it again, it has a new key value pair with the key being color and the value I assign to it. All right. Now, if I want to remove things from my dictionary, it's similar to lists. So what I'm going to do is I can call fourth planet, and then I can use pop, and then I can tell the key I want it to get rid of. In this case, I'm just going to delete its name. And then when I print fourth planet, when I print my dictionary, the name key value is gone. It is up here. I'd used pop, I took it out, and then I printed it, and it's gone. All right. You can also do this another way using something called del. So stands for delete. So I'm going to call del space fourth planet. Then I can give it another key value. This time I want to get rid of moons. Then I can print. I can print my dictionary again. And moons is gone as well. So two different ways to, again, do pretty much the same thing, but these are ways to remove things from dictionaries. Other ways probably exist out there. These are just the ones I know. But yeah, most common ones are pop and del. Okay. Now we're going to get on to a bit more advanced stuff. Everything beyond this point is skills you will be practicing in your homeworks. So we're going to start going through those. So I'm just going to call this the advanced section. Okay, and we're going to get started. So the first thing that is really popular with lists, as someone asked earlier, is we can add them together, and this is called concatenating. It's a really funky word. It's kind of fun to say, but that's what it's called. So concatenating. Okay, so I'm going to start all over with new lists. So I'm going to call list 1, and I'm just going to give it these numbers. Then I'm going to call list 2, give it some more numbers. And then just for funsies, we can print one of them out. Okay, so now to add them together, what would be someone's first guess? Yep, because that's literally what we're going to do. So we go list 3, going to call a whole new variable, and I'm going to give it the properties of list 1 plus list 2. And then I'm going to print list 3. Whoops. And it took the values from list 2, it picked them all up, and it threw them along with list 1 into a whole new variable that I assigned to be list 3. Okay, so that is how you add values of two lists together. But there's another way to do it. Oh, actually, I should mention before I do that, order here matters. So if I call a new variable called reverse list, and I assign it list 2 plus list 1, what is it going to give me? Yep. Because Python cares about the order of your lists. Yeah. We're going to get to that. You're stealing my show. Okay. So that is concatenating. As someone stole my thunder, we can append list 2. So what I can do is I can call another list. I'm going to call this one list 4. And I can give it the property of list 1 appending list 2. At least I'm pretty sure this is how you do it. Okay, cool. So then I'm going to print list 4. Okay, maybe that's not allowed. I can't remember. But what we can do instead is we can just take list 1 and we can append onto it list 2. Okay, let me rerun really quick. My apologies. Okay, so in this case, I started out with list 1, which was 1, 2, 3, all inside of square brackets. Then I appended all of list 2 as one single data chunk inside of list 1. So this is different than concatenating because you're basically you're basically nesting lists when you append, which you'll need to know for your homework. You will need to know how to work with nested lists, or at least get familiar with them. So that is one way to nest a list. Okay, now we're going to go into slicing. And slicing, oh yeah, question? Let's check. I'm pretty sure it does. Yep, still does. All we did is we just changed. So we told Python, I want to change list 1, and I want it to now take one part of its list to be list 2. But yeah, list 2 is left unchanged. Okay, so now we are going to do slicing. So basically with slicing, it means taking your big long list and shortening it. So you basically tell Python the interval of where you want the data in your list. So if you have like 1,000 numbers, but you really only want 6 of them, then this is what you do with slicing. So I'm going to call a new list just to start over, and I'm just going to give it a bunch of numbers. Then I can create a smaller list by going sub numbers and then calling it, you know what, I don't want to create another variable because honestly I can't remember all the times you can and can't create a variable with lists. But what we can do is we can call print, and then I can go numbers, and then I can slice the list with square brackets attached to it, and then I can tell Python inside of those square brackets what parts of my data I want to keep. So because Python starts counting at 0, if I type 1, then that'll give me 2. But what you need to know with lists is when you give it a value, so if I give it 5, we'll see what happens. It does not take the 5th index. So even though I'm saying, hey Python, I want numbers 2 through 6, Python doesn't count the last value. So that's important syntax to remember. So Python, at A, starts counting at 0, and at B, does not use the last number when you slice a list. Okay, are there any questions? Okay. So now we're going to do striding. So striding is similar to slicing, but it allows you to skip numbers. So instead of basically pulling a chunk out of my data set, I can instead pick and choose what exactly I want. So to stride, I can call, well, let me go over how you stride first. So when you attach the square brackets, just like I did to numbers, it follows an order of start, stop, and then step. Okay, so what this is doing is, unlike slicing, is I now have this new step value. So start is I tell Python where to begin. Stop is where I tell it to end. Step is saying, okay, every certain amount of steps, take this data number. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to call, we're going to call stride nums, and then I'm going to call numbers, and then I can say, okay, I want everything, and I want you to skip every 2 numbers. So I'm not putting anything in my start location. I'm not putting anything in my stop location. I'm only putting it in the step location, and I'm telling Python, skip every 2 numbers. And then give me those values. So then when I print stride, oops, sorry. It skips every 2 numbers out of my entire numbers list. So it starts at 1, and then it skips, and I get 3, and then it skips, and I get 5, etc. Yeah. It's basically saying, like, if there's 2, then it's like, well, it's like 1 and then give me the second. 1 and then give me the second. Yeah. Okay, so that's one way to stride. We can keep practicing with it because this was really hard for me to first really understand how to stride. I found it a little confusing. So we'll do some more examples. So it's start, stop, and then step. So what I can also do is I can print in reverse. So if I call rev, I don't know, we'll do reverse nums. And then I call numbers again, which is my original list of 1 to 8. I can call give me everything and then do it backwards. So then when I print it, it takes the list and it counts backwards. So now, if I want to use this all together, I could do, let's call this funky list, the funky nums, and then I can assign it numbers, and I can say, okay, let's start at the 2nd index, go to the 7th index, and then skip over every other number. Then I can print. And that's how striding is. So it allows me to basically pick and choose the exact values I want from my list, telling it where to stop and where to stop. Does everyone understand how 3, 5, and 7 appeared? If you don't, we can go over it again. I don't mind. Okay. All right, we're going to keep going. All right, Python has this way. Did you guys cover for loops? We done for loops? Okay. This is part of doing for loops with lists. So as you remember at the top, we're just going to go back up. I made this list called mixed. So this is what we're going to be working with. So that's what I called it. So if I go all the way back down, what I can do is I can write in a for loop. This is called enumerating. What I'm going to do is basically I can tell Python in my list to print both the index and the value. So I can say for index, comma value, in enumerate, mixed. I can then print index, comma value. Unexpected indent. Awkward. What's before the for? Do I have a space? Okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, so in my for loop, you can use this function called enumerate, and you can throw your list inside, and then it allows you to take, in this case, I called it index and value, but as you learned with for loops before, what you use before you call your values doesn't really matter. I could have called it I, comma J. I could have called it blue, comma red. Doesn't really matter in this case, but I called it index value just to illustrate what enumerate is doing. So it's saying, okay, in my mixed list, it's giving me the indexes 0, 1, 2, 3, because I have 4 values. and then it prints those values. So that's enumerate. I find that function to be very helpful, especially when I'm debugging. Okay. Now we're going to think about sorting lists. So Python does this for you. So if I give an unsorted list, you can call another variable, and I can call unsorted. Then I can tell Python, okay, I want a sorted list. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to call my original list, and then I'm going to call the function dot sort. Okay, so then when I print my sorted list, sorry, typo again. It sometimes does this. Okay, I need to figure out exactly why. Okay, if I call unsorted, I can call sort on it. Let me print it out. And it now sorts it from decreasing to increasing value. You can also do this the reverse way with the reverse function, but this is just one example. Okay. So in the last 10 minutes, I'm going to go over a couple more extreme examples of questions like you might find on your homework, just so you can practice getting the feeling of how to work with list questions. Okay. So I'll just call this example 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to call a new list called desserts. And I'm going to assign it different desserts as strings. Okay. And I now have a new list full of only strings. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new list, an empty one, called C words. And I'm going to fill it with all the words that start with C. So this could be an example homework question. It's just getting familiar with how to work with lists themselves. So to do this, I'm going to create a for loop. So I'm going to say for dessert in desserts. I'm going to say if the dessert value, so the string itself, starts with C, then I'm going to say, okay, I want you to take my empty list, C words. I want you to append dessert. And just for funsies, we're going to make it uppercase. Okay, so then if I call print, if I have no syntax errors, if I call print C words, sorry, starts. It now has taken the words that start with C in the string. It took them from the desserts list initially. It appended it to my empty list, and then it made them all uppercase. Okay. Do we have questions, or do you want me to do one more example? Yeah.
Instead of starts with, could you also index the actual value?
Probably. Yeah. This is just one way to do it. Okay. So now, if I wanted to be extra cool, I could do this all in one line. So what I can do is I'm going to do this with a different list. So I'm going to call words, and I'm going to put C. And then I'm basically going to type my whole entire for loop inside of these square brackets. So I can call dessert, dot upper. And then I'm going to say for dessert in desserts, if dessert starts with C. And then I'm going to print. Sorry, another typo. I did the same thing, except all in one line. So I said, okay, Python, for my list desserts, for every single dessert that starts with the letter C, can you make it uppercase? And then because they're all inside those square brackets, it created a new list for me. Is that cool? Normally I recommend, especially if you're working with other people with code, which you won't be doing so much in this class, but for future, I recommend not doing this actually. Because when you look back at your code, it's much harder to read one line rather than a function. But if you're going for efficiency, and perhaps you're the only one working with the code, then one line is just fine. Okay. I'm going to try and do this last example, but I might run out of time. So we're going to just try and do it really quick. All right, so now we're going to do an example dictionary question. Or did anyone need me to stay here longer to copy it down? Okay. All right, so I'm going to call a dictionary called Fave Nums. Then I'm going to call a name. We'll just be all the boring physics names. We'll do Alice. And we'll say her favorite nums are 5, 101, and 66. And that is a key and value pair. Then I'm going to call Bob. And I am going to give him some favorite numbers. 7, 23, and we'll do 111. And then, because I wrote this in alphabetical order, we'll do Chuck. And we'll give him some favorite numbers. Okay, and if I have no syntax errors, that should work. Cool. Okay, so I made a new dictionary with some people and their kind of arbitrarily favorite numbers. Okay, so now let's say I wanted to determine the average number of every single person in this list all at once. I can do that by writing another for loop. And to do this, I'm just going to show you how to do it in one line. And then if you want to practice, you can practice taking what I did in one line and putting it into a for loop kind of notation. Okay, so I'm going to call average nums. Then I'm going to call dictionary because I'm making a new dictionary with just the averages of their favorite numbers. And then I'm going to call the key. And then I'm going to call sum of all the numbers. Then I'm going to call the length of that list. And then I'm going to use enumerate. Or not enumerate. I might have written this down incorrectly, but we'll see. Okay. And then we're going to print. Okay, and then if I was to print this new dictionary, it will give me the average of every single person in my key and value pairs with their average number. So the names are the keys, the lists are the values, and now we have floats. So that's an example of a homework question of just playing around with lists. Cool. All right. Yes. It's just part of the format of syntax. with Python, but that's a good question. So you also had to do it here with upper, and then we also had to do it with sort when I called it up here. It's basically taking your variable and then saying you want to manipulate it in some way. And then you put open parentheses because it's technically a function. Okay. If no one has any other questions, you are free to go home. I will post the slides on B courses if you want a more detailed look, but it's this demo. I will also post this demo with all the answers if you want to look at it again later. And as always, you can ask on Ed. And yeah, thank you guys.
Yes, there's a question. What I did, wait, you did